Affordable housing has, for as long as I can remember, been at the forefront of discussions amongst governments around the world, but particularly amongst African governments. As Africa boasts a young, vibrant, and ever-growing population which shows no signs of slowing down, a blessing by any measure, but of course, if not properly managed, could easily become misfortune. 1.2 billion people strong, 60% of which are under 25 years of age, and a third between the ages of 15 to 34 years, being the fastest growing continent, projected to double by year 2050. But I think that people do not have a full grasp of what this really means for us. A demographic which is coming straight out of school, getting started in life, starting a family, starting a business, amongst other things, either needing to purchase a home or renting an office space. Real estate is far more important to the success of this demographic than we may acknowledge. To make the conversation simpler, today we would be taking a look at Ghana, the gateway to Africa as it is dubbed, which happens to be my country, as a case study. It is estimated by the Ministry of Housing in this country that there is a 2 million housing deficit in this country, a country which has a sturdy incline in the middle class, which in fact, in many ways, is reshaping industrial growth, with about 40% of the population classified as middle class, earning an average of $8 to $9 per day, and a country classified as a low-income developing country. The demographic, group or caliber of people that we are creating home solutions for are far not in the position to be able to afford luxury homes as we see as the trend in this country. On the other hand, you have Ghanaians living abroad, the diaspora and expats relocating to Ghana or living in Ghana for an extensive period of time. These luxury homes definitely cater to this demographic, but this is certainly a smaller fraction of the people living or moving into the country, and honestly, would be defeating the costs of Ghanaians putting Ghanaians first. Looking at it from that angle, maybe it isn't Ghanaians failing to put their fellow Ghanaians first, since the key players in the construction industry in the country are foreign companies. It is for all these reasons the President of the Republic recently, on the 3rd of March, called on the Ghana Chamber of Construction Industry, challenging it and other industry players to come up with solutions to building good quality but affordable homes. The banks are doing their bit, but not nearly enough and barely scratching the surface. So we have to do it, and we can in fact do it. There are solutions to this problem, easy solutions to be fair. But first, let me be clear on one thing. There's nothing that I could possibly say that isn't already known, already exists, and in many cases already in action, being implemented by some companies and individuals. The difference here is the scale at which this should be done, the speed we need to move at for the scale to become feasible, and the commitment level that is needed to achieve this speed. There is a solution, like I said, actually two of them from where I sit. Both have their advantages and disadvantages. One thing, however, that is a constant in both solutions is how developers interact with the supply chain and procuring items. If you happen to find difficulty navigating these waters, maybe you can come see me. And maybe I can be a compass pointing you in the right direction. Starting with COVID, to the war in Ukraine, making it difficult for businesses to stay afloat. Now is the time for real estate developers to look at the brighter side with a positive lens and take full advantage. You are not the only ones affected. The key, however, is to broker large quantity material, stocking up heavily, locking prices in for a year or two straight. Immediately, you don't have to deal with what everyone else deals with when economies go south. But for this to happen, you need a lot of either cash or credit. And even for large companies, for the scale that I'm speaking to, you'd still need a little liquidity. There are two ways, as I indicated earlier, to go about this. One, is to sell units off plan, as is the case with many developers, especially in our parts of the world, big and small. Smaller ones usually do it because they won't even be able to meet the requirements for financiers. Two, obviously, would be to take out loans from financiers. I'd pick the former. You see, the thing about selling off plan has its downsides, of course, which is usually intangible. Like reputations can be under a lot of scrutiny, which makes absolute sense looking at the society that we live in today, where consumers have been scammed, dealt with land litigation, straining bureaucracies of property acquisition, land guards, property in the waterways, property in a highway, stool lands, government lands, and this and that, and this and that. You can only understand, I'm sure, how consumers feel when they know that the property is not completed, when others paid for properties that even existed and yet got nothing out of it. I'm sure you can understand that just as I do, you risk something there, which is why speed is of extreme necessity. Why is it so important anyway that what it costs to build malls become much less expensive? That the amount of money that we require to construct roads get much less than it is now, and homes become affordable? Well, this is not just about homes, but also about real estate in general. It is necessary that we are able to build at a fraction of what we build at, and more importantly, with speed, as I indicated earlier. Africa is known as a developing world simply because it doesn't look like a developed world. Pardon my brushing away the importance of all the other technical socioeconomic factors that give us the tag, and excuse my relentlessness in making something so complicated seem so simple. But people simply operate on perception. No one dares to tag Dubai or Abu Dhabi as developing cities, and this is, for the most part, if not entirely, due to the extreme amounts of focus and concentration on real estate in these cities in the past couple decades. Let's do a little math here. There is a need for 2 million homes in this country alone. Assuming government was going to build a quarter of this, that leaves us with 1.5 million homes. Assuming again that we had 500 viable real estate companies in this country, which I don't think is the case. Each company would have to build about 3,000 homes, bearing in mind the population keeps growing. The point here is, there is more than enough for everyone. As much as you might be tempted to bombard your own mind with facts, figures, and so much of technical data, convincing yourself that this isn't as simple as I may make it seem, know this: there is a lot that trickles down once the right perception is achieved. The entire point of all of this is to say that we can get out of that tag of being developing countries. And the way forward is not entirely on government only. The private sector has a huge role to play in all of this. Countries all over the world have been able to build to the point where they are because the private sector and the public sector have worked hand in hand to build their countries. It is time for the private sector in this country and this entire continent to step up to the plate and accept the challenge. This is the way that we build, and no other way. Thank you.